Before Taehyung left, Jungkook arrived silently. A fragment of a story about unspoken feelings. Jungkook arrived silently. He didn't bring flowers, nor did he bring words. Just silence, and perhaps a last hope. The question was no longer what was said, but what was felt when there was nothing left to say. This event was not captured on camera. There was no official documentation, no social media posts. But it was in the absence of witnesses and the spotlight that this moment became real, more human than just the image of two global pop stars. It came as a portrait of a silent, yet profound, parting. Not just two celebrities fulfilling their national duty, but two humans who had to let go of their time, space, and shared routines for a while. For the public, Jungkook and Taehyung's separation was just a continuation of the long narrative of BTS members' military service. But behind the glittering grand stage, there was a small space filled with unspoken loss. And the night before Taehyung's departure, that space became real, inhabited by two hearts that met not to speak, but to ensure one thing, that they were still there for each other. The meeting didn't last long. It might have only lasted a few minutes. But time had no power over this kind of meeting. In one silent embrace, Jungkook conveyed everything: support, longing, worry, and, most importantly, a promise. While Taehyung, in the same silence, responded, not with the word yes, not with "I'll miss you," but with the calmness in his gaze and a grip that was tighter than before. After that parting, the world kept spinning. But for Jungkook, something stopped. On stage, he still smiled, still danced, still sang. But behind the scenes, something was empty. In one of his solo interviews, he said softly, "I've been feeling lonely lately." That sentence might sound ordinary, but for those who knew, those words held a lot of meaning. More than he dared to express directly. Meanwhile, Taehyung wrote a letter to his fans before entering his military service. The letter was warm, polite, and full of love for Army. But there was a nuance that couldn't be missed, lines that seemed addressed to someone. Someone who didn't just read with their eyes, but with their heart. Someone who, though not mentioned, was so real in those words. Time kept moving, and distance became a new routine. But the traces of feelings left behind remained alive. Fans began to notice patterns, small, unannounced but felt patterns. The same online time, the songs played at certain times, the empty gaze behind the camera lens. Jungkook still played the songs they used to listen to together. He slipped in lyrics that were similar to Taehyung's writings. When asked, he just smiled and bowed his head. Because deep longing doesn't always need a statement on the other side. From behind the military barracks fence, Taehyung wrote a personal note. Some feelings can't disappear. They just turn into prayers. That sentence was never officially published, but it became part of the narrative circulating among fans. And that prayer, it seemed, never failed to find its way back. One time, Jungkook was seen at a location that Taehyung had once called his favorite place. There was no official schedule, no professional reason. Just a silent visit, as if wanting to feel again the traces left by someone. No statement, but everyone understood its meaning. When the day of Taehyung's return arrived, the public cheered. But for Jungkook, that day was more than just a physical reunion. It was a moment where the stopped time finally started moving again. And when they looked at each other, there was nothing left to say. Their eyes said it all. I'm still here. I never really left. There was no live broadcast, no special celebration. Just two people meeting again as slightly more mature, slightly calmer versions of themselves. But still the same in one thing. They knew each other, without needing to explain. After that, everything moved slowly. There were no announcements of collaborations, no major promotions. Just one new song from Jungkook, which he then invited Taehyung to listen to. The song didn't mention names, nor did it tell specific events. But for those who listened with their hearts, the lyrics were like a long-held letter. Taehyung listened until the end, then said softly, "Did you write this while I was gone?" Jungkook nodded. Every night, little by little. ARMY felt a shift. Their live broadcasts felt warmer. Their conversations were calmer, but full of meaning. The glances caught by the camera spoke louder than words. No acting, no concept. Just two people who had walked through their own storms and now returned, not as a couple brought together by fate, but as two humans who never truly separated. They didn't often mention each other's names. Because love doesn't need repeated affirmation. Longing doesn't always have to be explained. And the strongest relationships are those that remain intact even when tested by time and distance. That night, as Taehyung sat in front of the piano and Jungkook sang the song he wrote during his friend's absence, there was no dialogue that needed to be replayed. Only one word was whispered between them after the last note stopped. But behind the electrifying silence, the wordless embrace, and the song full of hidden meaning, a question arose that couldn't be avoided. Was all this real? Or was it just a narrative shaped by public perception and social media algorithms? Some snippets of these events did seem to slip between posts on TikTok, YouTube video clips, and fan analyses on Twitter that connected small dots in Jungkook and Taehyung's online activities. But how true was all of that? Were we putting together a puzzle from pieces that were never meant to form the same picture? We live in an era where collective emotions are often shaped by virality, not by verification. When a fan posts a theory about the same online time between two idols, tens of thousands of users immediately believe it. When someone says that Jungkook's new song feels like a letter to Taehyung, thousands of others agree without questioning the source. But is this evidence or just mass illusion? Skepticism doesn't mean hating. On the contrary, a skeptical attitude is a form of love for truth. Therefore, it's important to ask, did Jungkook really visit Taehyung's favorite place? Did Taehyung's letter really contain a hidden message for someone personally? Were they online at the same time for emotional reasons? Or just a technical coincidence? And if they were indeed longing for each other in silence, are we entitled to claim it as public property? Events like this are easy to ignite public emotions because humans tend to seek meaning in silence. We fill in empty spaces with personal interpretations, connecting dots that may not actually be related. But shouldn't we also ask, are the feelings we're building really coming from them or from ourselves? Social media is a fertile ground for dramatic narratives. Platforms like TikTok and YouTube are designed to make us believe, even when the evidence is incomplete. We watch videos with sad music, touching narratives, and slow-motion clips, and quickly, we feel certain of their truth. But what happens if that narrative is actually shaped for engagement, for algorithms, for virality? There's also a more shocking possibility. What if all this is constructed? Not by Jungkook or Taehyung personally, but by the entertainment industry system that knows very well how powerful this emotional dynamic is in building fan loyalty. In an industry that understands the power of shipping, fanfiction, and visual conspiracy theories, is it possible that the moments that look natural are actually designed? Are we, unknowingly, becoming part of a very neat emotional campaign? However, we can't just accuse everything of being a hoax. Sometimes, silence is real. Feelings can live in silence. Not everything that is unheard means it doesn't exist. It could be that what we're witnessing is two humans who are truly going through their own emotional journeys, separated from the spotlight, yet still observed from afar. This is where collective reflection and maturity are important. We must be able to balance hope and truth, interpretation and verification. We can celebrate the beauty of this narrative, but we also have a duty not to get caught in blind fanaticism. So, what about you as a reader and viewer? Do you believe this narrative because your heart wants it to be true, or are you starting to question? Who benefits if this story continues to live and grow? Are you convinced that these events are authentic, or are they actually a very clever communication strategy? We realize that the information we're presenting comes from various sources: TikTok, YouTube, Twitter, online forums, and broadcast snippets. However, so far, there has been no official statement confirming or denying this emotional narrative. Therefore, we're not asking you to believe. Instead, we're inviting you to think. Think back. Are the emotions you're feeling coming from facts or from fantasies? Is the love you're supporting real love between two people, or a shadow created by the collective illusion of fans? Finally, one question that may be the most important of all. Are we loving them, or are we just loving the story about them? Let's reflect. Let's discuss. Because in a world full of information like today, skepticism is the most wise form of affection.